Hi everyone, welcome to our Master of Social Work webinar. My name is Cara. I am in the student recruitment team, the Faculty of Medicine, Dentistry and Health Sciences. I would just like to start the webinar today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I am, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. If you have any questions during the webinar today, please feel free to type them in the chat during our presentation, and then we'll be able to read them out, and our students and academic Dr. Katselic will to address them for you towards the end of the presentation. So in today's session, we're going to hear from Dr. Katselic first up about our Masters of Social Work, and then we'll hear from our current students. So I'll just introduce them now. We have Chantel, Larissa, and Georgina. Would you ladies like to say hi?
Sure thing.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
How's it going?
Did you want to share with the students a little bit about yourself so they can know who to address their questions to, if they have any?
Yeah, no worries. Who wants to go first?
My name's. Do you want me to go if I'm first on the list?
Go
And tell us my name.
Good.
I am in my, I'm going to say last 8 weeks or semester of my Masters of Social Work, which is exciting. I have an undergrad in nutrition dietetics, and I guess how I got to social work was in my 6 months of practicing in a clinic. I realised that a lot of the patients I was working with had a lot of shame and guilt around food, and it ended up being a lot of, I guess, counselling that happened in the sessions, which I felt was out of my reach and my depth, which then led me to go, okay, I think I need to continue studying. This is an area that I am passionate about, and I did a year of psychology at UniMel and felt that it wasn't really getting me where I wanted to be, which was more understanding people in context rather than applying theory to everyone in a cookie cutter mold, which is how I felt and interpreted the psychology degree. And so I found myself in social work, and it's been some of the best and really mind-opening 3 years so far. So yeah.
Thanks, Chantel. How about Larissa? Do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I come from quite a different background. Like, my undergrad was economics and finance, and I finished that, like, I graduated 7 years ago, so that was quite a while ago. Yeah, I worked in finance for a few years, mostly in London, and just really, it didn't really sit right with me the whole way through. I always wanted to do something along the lines like of working with people, similar to Chantel, in a very engaged way, and never really found something that quite fit. I did think about psychology for a while, but did come across the Master of Social Work, and the more I learnt about social work, the more it resonated with me. While I was in London, I did a couple of summers at a summer camp in the US for disadvantaged teens, and that got me really excited and motivated for working with youth. Yeah, shortly after, I actually applied for the Masters of Social Work with Melbourne Uni, and started a year later and moved to Melbourne.
And Georgina, how about you?
So I did my undergraduate at Melbourne. I did an arts degree, and I majored in gender studies and media and communications. I'd always been interested in social work. I was told at school that I should go into social work, but I kind of chickened out because I didn't want to pigeonhole myself after high school. I was a bit confused. But halfway through my degree and doing gender studies and learning so much about structural and systemic issues in our world, I was like, yep, definitely want to do social work. I applied straight after finishing in 2017, my undergrad, but took a year off as a gap year, deferred, and then started in 2019. Yeah, and I'm going into my last placement now, and will be graduating at the end of the year. So yeah.
Thanks, Georgina. I'm now going to pass to Kath Salick, who's going to run through some slides about the Master of Social Work. So just bear with us for just 2 seconds while we set that up.
Okay, I'll see if I can do mine. Is that showing up fine?
Yeah, no.
I've got
maybe,
social work challenges ahead.
So I can't see the slides yet for your end. Maybe we'll...
Can you see my slides now?
I can't. How about anyone else?
I can't see the slides.
Okay. How
I
do
can't
do
either.
Do you want to
Kath,
go through them, Cara, and I'll just let you know.
absolutely. Just give me 2 seconds. I'll share my screen again. Thanks for bearing with us, everyone.
Okay, thanks for that. So thank you. I'm so glad to be invited today and so happy to see so many of you interested in social work. It's a wonderful profession and I think we've got a really great course on offer. One of the questions we often get is, what is social work? How is it different from psychology? How is it different from allied health disciplines? And I think this definition really speaks a lot of truth to what we're trying to do. So social work is a practice-based profession and an academic discipline that promotes social change and development, social cohesion, and the empowerment and liberation of people. Principles of social justice, human rights, collective responsibility, and respect for diversities are central to social work. The social workers are really involved in looking at the person in their environment. We're looking at why people and families and communities might struggle or might thrive, and we're kind of doing work to look at the context of why that is happening and to intervene and to change that. As you can see, it's quite political. We're looking at liberation and empowerment and social justice. So it really takes quite a political lens to working with people. And that really strikes it as very different from psychology or your other allied health professions. Can we go to the next slide? All right, so it's also an extremely diverse profession. I think this is one of the reasons why I decided to do social work as a undergrad, was that there's just so many different things that you can do, and it's a career path that can take you in multiple different directions. So we do work across a whole lot of fields: alcohol and other drug, child and family welfare, clinical and mental health. So I'm a mental health social worker by practice. Do most of my experience, but you can do community work and community development, working in correctional institutions, so working in the justice system increasingly, family courts, aged care. We have industrial social workers. We have graduates who work for law firms who actually do work cover claims and actually work with people who are doing big claims like that, as well as health social work and school social work. We also have people who enter into policy and research as well. So while there's very much a lot of sort of face-to-face direct social practice, we also do have social work graduates who work in government, developing social policy or working for some of the NGOs doing policy and research work. So it is a hugely diverse pathway, and the course is a generalist course. We are trying to equip you to possibly step into any of these areas. We do offer 2 500-hour fieldwork placements, and it's a really good opportunity to specialise in what you want to do and actually get some hands-on experience in what that looks like. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, why study social work? It's really strong international degree recognition. So I think in most countries of the world, this course will fit within your accreditation requirements. So you can work in the UK and the US, for example, as a social worker. It's multifaceted. Like I said, you can do multiple different things. So for myself, I've been a counsellor, I've been a mental health practitioner, I've worked in training, I've worked in research, I've worked in education. And so it's always changing. There's always new different roles. And the employment opportunities are fantastic. Our graduates really tend to get really good jobs within a few months of graduation. I don't have the exact stats here, but I know it's very, very, very strong. We have really great partnerships with a range of different agencies. So the hospitals in Melbourne, as well as Child Protection, Department of Human Services, and a lot of the big NGOs. So really good pathways to enter into graduate roles. The other pathway is to become a mental health accredited social worker. So the Australian Association of Social Work, they accredit social workers with 2 years post-qualifying experience in the mental health field. And that means that you can actually access a Medicare number to work through the Better Access to Mental Health practice. If you wanted to do private practice, it's a pathway. And increasingly accredited social workers are working through the NDIS as the National Disability Insurance Scheme as accredited social workers. So there's also opportunities for private practice that are really great. Okay, so social work at Melbourne. We're a master's degree, so we were one of the first master's degrees in the country, and it's a 2-year program, full-time qualifying. There is the opportunity to do part-time. You can do it over 4 years, or actually until you can do it for 3 years. There is a lot of flexibility in that, but the 2 years is what the majority of our students do, and it's a good, solid, packed-in course, but it does get you out the door quite quick into the workforce. We have an amazing staff here at Melbourne. We have a lot of strong research within the department that actually informs them about teaching, but we also have practitioners, so people who have a lot of experience working as social workers who've then gone on to work in the tertiary sector or gone in to do some higher education. And so we've got experts in mental health, in family and child welfare, in Indigenous services, in community work, alcohol and other drug, and law. So it's a really, really diverse teaching team and highly experienced. The other really great thing, I mentioned this earlier, is we have really wonderful partnerships with our industry partners. So we have connections with all the major hospitals in Victoria. We have connections with NGOs such as Launch Housing, Mary Community Health, a whole lot of other NGOs, and we have a lot of other innovative placement opportunities. We've also got really good opportunities in rural, interstate and international. So we've got placements out in Shepparton, we have placements out in Alice Springs, we have placements in India and in Detroit. So there's a lot of opportunities to, and beyond that, I think there's quite a number of international placement opportunities. So it's a really exciting place to do a placement. We can really guarantee a really rich and rewarding placement in a range of different fields. You're in the MDHS, the Faculty of Medicine, Dentistry and Health Sciences, which is a highly, highly regarded university, a really highly regarded faculty. We were one of the best health faculties in the world. So it's a really good, it comes with a lot of reputation. The department is also one of the oldest social work departments in Australia. I think we compete with the University of Sydney. So we do come with some prestige on that front. And finally, as a qualifying master's, it's AQF level 9 course, which means it's a pathway to PhD. So we do have a research capstone as part of this, and which does mean that you can enter into, if your marks are good enough and you're interested in research, we can create a pathway to PhD, and we have a number of amazing researchers who could guide you in that. So if that's an opportunity that you'd like to pursue, it's a really good opportunity here at Melbourne. Okay, we have a lot of different subjects. I've just listed our core subjects here, but as you can see, it's a lot of a range between some theoretical subjects that kind of talk about lifespan, how we look about risk and resilience. We have a number of theory subjects that really ground you in a social work approach to theory, but we also have skills-based subjects. So we have a counselling and interviewing skills, working with families and working with groups and communities, where we're really trying to equip you with some practice-based skills and try and make that as live as possible. Along with that, we've got a range of other more macro level courses, which look at policy, looking at program planning and evaluation, so really getting you ready for leadership out in the community. We have a range of different electives that you can choose from. And probably most importantly, I think the supervised field placements are really core to this course. And again, it's one of the reasons why I decided to do social work, was that you're actually getting a really sizable chunk of practice experience out in the field. So it's essentially 3 months of placement twice. And so many of our graduates actually get work in their placements, and you do so much of the learning on it. You come and you do these coursework subjects, and then you're actually out there doing a social work job under guidance of qualified social workers, and it brings all of this to life. And so it's a really, really wonderful opportunity. And I think it's part of the reason why we have such good graduate outcomes is that we have such great opportunities to practice these skills. Yes, so next, I think that's it. I'll hand it back to you, Cara.
Thanks, Kath. So we're just really quickly going to run through some information about entry requirements and how to apply. So in order to be eligible for the Masters of Social Work, you do need an undergraduate degree with at least 1 year of full-time studies in social sciences or equivalent. I'll explain about that a little bit more in a minute. And you do need to have completed that degree within the last 10 years, or alternatively have an older undergrad degree, but you have done more recent graduate study that just demonstrates your capacity to undertake future graduate study. You're also going to need evidence of paid or volunteer work experience of up to 40 hours, so something that shows that you can work with people. And a personal statement of up to 500 words that outlines why you want to be considered for the course that the selection committee will look at when ranking your application. You'll also need to nominate a professional referee as well for the selection committee to contact should they have any questions. So what is a social science subject? So the selection committee take the definition of a social science subject from the Academy of Social Sciences in Australia, so you can see the examples there. You do need the equivalent of 1 year full-time in any combination of these subjects. If you're not sure, I would still encourage you to apply because sometimes students can do additional subjects to make this up prior to starting the Masters of Social Work, and of course the selection committee will let you know if that's you. So Graduate Access Melbourne. Graduate Access Melbourne is the University of Melbourne's equity program for domestic students. So there's a range of different categories you can apply for, including rural or isolated area, disadvantaged socioeconomic circumstances, disability or medical condition, personal difficulties. If you're an Indigenous applicant, you can also apply using this pathway. And I would also encourage you, if you qualify for multiple different categories, to make sure that you apply across those categories. And this is information that you can just lodge when you put your application in, and then it will help us when we rank your application. If you have any questions about this, you can feel free to pop them in the chat. Here is some application timelines for the upcoming intake. So the current round of applications closes on the 15th of June, so that's next week. And we are processing outcomes on a rolling basis, which means that we look at some every week and we will send offers every week. So there's no set deadline that we will send out the outcomes. Just a reminder, when you apply, you'll need a personal statement, your CV, your professional referee contact, and evidence of meeting English language requirements should you be from a non-English speaking background. Should you wish to apply, you can do so via our website, which is linked at the start of the presentation under the How to Apply tab. The application takes about 20 minutes. It's quite quick to complete once you have all your documents together. So new for this intake, we are trialing 48-hour outcomes. So this offer applies to you if you've performed reasonably well in your undergraduate degree. You're planning to submit your application by June 15th, and you're able to meet with a member of the student recruitment team. So I popped the link in the slides, but this information will also be in the email that we send out after the webinar. So if you're able to meet these criteria, then we will be able to hopefully get you an outcome in 2 business days. So now this is what you all came to the webinar for. We've got our student panel. So we're just going to run through some questions with our student panel. So if I could get you guys to make sure that you've turned on your webcams and microphones. And then we're going to go through some commonly asked questions. And of course, if you have a question for Kath as well, please make sure you put that in the chat. So I think the first thing I'd really like to hear from our current students is, why did you choose social work at Melbourne? So maybe Georgina, we'll start with you.
So yeah, as I said before, I did do my undergraduate at Melbourne, but when I was thinking about degrees, I did look outside at other unis as well. I compared all the different master's degrees that were on available to me, but I found that the Melbourne degree had the best structure in terms of when subjects were, where placements were, but also what subjects were available. I felt that they covered a much broader range of subjects, and that we didn't have to, I found other subjects I was having to choose electives and tossing up whether I wanted to look at Indigenous communities or look at mental health or look at these things, whereas at Melbourne they were kind of all covered, and I could then choose an elective that I was interested in without compromising on any other knowledge, which I felt was the best outcome for me, so that I had a broader understanding of social work and was more prepared to go into whatever industry I was wanting to go to. And I guess also for me, it felt like a natural progression to keep at Melbourne, because I did really enjoy my time there in undergrad. So yeah, it was nice to be able to keep going and do my master's here as well.
And Chantal, what about you? Oh, Chantal, I think you might be muted. Oh, can anyone else hear Chantal, or is it just me?
Yeah,
I can't hear it.
I muted myself, but you had me muted still, so I was like, I don't know what to do. Sorry. Sorry guys. Similar to Georgina, I felt the same because I'm originally from Adelaide, so when I was applying for Masters of Social Work, I looked at a few of the other universities as well, and I just liked that the University of Melbourne had really covered core areas that I knew of social work, and that the electives were really towards the end of your journey through the degree, so you had a bit of an understanding of, I guess, what was expected of you. You can really tell that they've thought about the foundational things first, and areas of focus in your first year, where even if you do part-time, which is what I did in my first year, you still get a really good understanding. And then in your second year, your third year, and if you go into a fourth year as well, you just get a really nice progression with the placement in the middle of the year as well. And I guess I liked the electives. I think the electives actually really won me over, because I thought about where it was that I want to go at the end of this degree, which is into the mental health accreditation. And I liked that one of the electives was that, and also like trauma-informed perspectives. And I felt that none of the other universities offer that. So that was a real selling point. That's from a personal perspective though. So, but yeah, overall, very similar reasons to Georgina. Yeah.
I might throw a question to Kath. We've got one from the audience. It says, hi, I finished a grad dip in 2009, but I've worked in irrelevant work since then, and I'm just outside of the 10-year window. Should I still apply?
Yeah, we're pretty strict, unfortunately, on the 10-year rule, which is really frustrating when you've just got that thing in. Put an application in, though, because we can have what's called a CAPS offer. So basically what we do is we offer you to do one subject to trial, just to make sure that you've got your academic skills back, and then if that goes fine, then you can have entry into the rest of the course. So definitely do apply, and we can consider you for a CAPS entry. It's not a wipeout altogether. We understand people have had lots of wonderful experience as well. So put an application in, and the selection committee will have a look, and we can make a decision on that front.
And so now moving on to learning experiences. Larissa, could you share with us what a week in the life of a social work student might look like?
For sure. So I'm in my first year. I've just finished my first semester, so I'm pretty new to it in a lot of ways. But there we had basically two full intensive days on Mondays and Tuesdays every week for 8 weeks. And beyond that, we had the final assessment tasks that we have just completed and handed in after some swap back. But those 2 intensive days were they started at like 8:30, finished around like between 4 and 5:15, I believe, and mostly like back-to-back classes, which I actually found I really quite liked that. I felt like it was like a good way to stay solidly engaged. And it also allowed me to work around those 2 days. Initially I was working Wednesday to Friday, so it really kind of allowed for that flexibility, for weekday work as well. So they're basically those 2 full intensive days, and yeah.
And Georgina, would you be able to share with us what your experience of the first day of your placement was like? Because this course obviously does have the 2 fieldwork placements.
Placement was like, it's nervous your first day, like can be a bit nerve-wracking. Definitely if you haven't worked in an area similar to where you're going on placement. But most of us are pretty lucky that we go in a group of students. Some people do. I may be the only student that goes to their area for placement, but the majority of us do go in groups of at least 2, sometimes up to 5 or 6 if you're going to a hospital. So I was lucky I was with 2 other students, and it was really welcoming. The places that you go to, they're all used to having students. They know how to work with students, and they're very accommodating places, and they're really there to support you. So yeah, we had a really great first day, definitely some nerves at the start, but by the end of the day, I think we all felt really comfortable about where we were going, and we felt like we were going to be able to achieve what we needed to achieve in the 3-month placement that we undertook last year. It was a sigh of relief, I think, at the end of the day, because I was really nervous, but I really enjoyed my first day at my placement.
And Kath, we've had a couple of questions come through the chat around placements that I'm hoping you can help us with. So the first one is regarding someone that's already working in the field. They're asking if one placement can be credited through their current work, if that's possible.
Yep. Look, it is possible. We are, as a course, accredited through the Australian Association of Social Work, and they do have quite strict requirements for RPL for past work experience. But it is something that's on offer. But we do have to go through a bit of a process of actually looking at what your role is, who supervised you, and making that decision. So it is certainly something that we can consider. One thing that you could do is shoot me an email. My email's at the end of the slides here, I believe, or get in touch with someone else at the department, and we can actually just have a look and give you a bit of a sense for that RPL requirement for work experience, because it might be something that might decide to shift your decision making around the course, because it is a big requirement to take 2 3-month placements. We think they're really great. But yeah, there are students who do apply for RPL. But like I said, unfortunately, we're very much restricted by our accreditation requirements. So we do need to go through a pretty detailed examination of what your role was and the work that you were doing. So do get in touch with some more details if you like.
And yet another question about placement. If I'm studying part-time, can I also do my placement part-time?
Yep, we do. Again, we ask that my students do their placements full-time, but you can apply to do it part-time if you've got life circumstances that require you to do that. For example, we know that some of our students, it's not financially possible to work full-time for 3 months for free. It's quite an ask. You might have caring responsibilities. You may have a whole lot of things there. Like I said, we do really prefer that students do it full-time, because most of our placement partnerships expect that. Part-time placements are a little bit trickier to find, so we can apply for it. You can definitely apply to do that. The placement team are pretty good at allowing it, but it may well reduce the amount of opportunities that we have, because we tend to have agreements with organisations for 3 months. But yeah, part-time is possible.
And Kath, sorry, another one for you. How would the placement opportunities have changed due to the coronavirus 19 pandemic?
Good question. Look, it's been a bit of a challenge for us. The students are giggling, knowing forever fell what we're doing. Unfortunately, we were due to go out in May for 3 months, and a lot of our placement agencies pulled the plug completely, and the university paused. But we're working on, we've restructured some of the courses so that we've got different times that students can go out, so that we're spreading placements out across the year. And we're really working with our placement partners to get things up and running. And we're also exploring some opportunities where the university are working in partnership with organisations to provide a joint placement. So doing some project work, evaluation research in partnership with the university. So we've had to think on our feet, but we're definitely we're very committed to making sure that our students have good placement opportunities, and we've been able to kind of rejig the course. So, but hopefully when you start, that won't be a problem. Fingers crossed we can beat this thing.
I wanted to talk a little bit about transitioning from an undergrad to a graduate degree, or even coming back to study a graduate degree. And Larissa, I know you mentioned that you were out of uni for a while and you're in the workforce. Could you talk a little bit about what it was like coming back to study?
It's a good question. It was it did take it took a slight adjustment, but it also felt very familiar at the same time. So I really enjoyed the fact that it was quite intensive, like I said before, like 2 intensive days. You know, because it meant that you could kind of work your working life around it, which is, you know, often necessary for a lot of people. That did make for an easier transition. Obviously, juggling assignments with work can be, you know, it's one of the challenges with doing graduate study, I suppose. But there's just so much support that really, I felt like that the support that was around us while we were studying really facilitated that, for sure. And even when it came to you know, the flexibility around that, and because of the challenges that it brings, that was very helpful. So for the transition, I thought. So yes, it was really quite enjoyable going back to the study after 7 years since being out. So yeah.
And Georgina, you mentioned that you came through a University of Melbourne undergrad degree and sort of went straight into the graduate study. What was that experience like for you?
It was really good. I felt like as though I didn't have as much of a transition. That obviously, like going into a master's degree, there's higher expectations of you. The work has to be done to a high standard. But I really think doing my degree at Melbourne did prepare me for the quality of work that I was needing to do in my master's. Especially doing the capstones in my third year subjects, we were really pushed in our research capacities, in our writing capacities, and just our academic knowledges. And I guess having a theoretical background in gender studies really helped me in a lot of the theory subjects that we do in our first year in the masters. But yeah, no, I felt a really smooth transition. I definitely think it's a lot less daunting when you know the uni. I knew the campus. I wasn't having to learn a whole new place. I also kind of got to help some of, especially last year when we were all starting, I felt like I was also able to support a lot of the students who maybe didn't know their way around, or didn't know where certain cafes or toilets were, or how to get to a certain lecture theatre. So it was actually really nice to be able to help people, because I guess for me, my transition was maybe a little smoother than others. But I felt that I was really well prepared for going into my master's from having my arts degree done at Melbourne.
Thanks, Georgina. Kath, we've had another question come through for you, and it's about the entry requirements. So some of the students have mentioned in the chat that due to COVID-19, they've had difficulty getting relevant volunteer experience. Would you have any advice for them given the circumstances?
Yeah, look, I think it's 40 hours, so it's a pretty short thing of time, and I would really highly recommend getting on to sort of Seek Volunteer, or looking at your local council websites, or these kinds of things, because there is, while face-to-face kind of in-person volunteer opportunities might be diminished, I think there's definitely still demand out there. The other opportunity would be to have a look at some of the community organisations out there in the world, and actually sending them an email and asking if you can come and you can help out. So, for example, we've had a webinar last week with the CEO from St Mary's House of Welcome in Fitzroy, and they were giving out triple or even more than triple, huge amounts more food than they usually would during these times. So there's a lot of agencies that are actually really under the pump at the moment. Food Bank would be another one that are actually, because of COVID, under more demand. So I would highly recommend reaching out to them anyway, and having a look at Seek Volunteer and trying to find that experience. So yeah, do seek it out. Don't be too afraid to ask, because there are different organisations that would love extra hands on deck.
We've had a question that's come through for our student panel, and this particular applicant is interested to know whether any of you would be able to share the volunteer or work experience that you had when you applied.
Yeah, I'd be happy
absolutely.
to. Yeah.
We'll start with you, Georgina, and we'll work our way around.
So I had a background in disability. In my undergrad, I'd been volunteering with an organisation that does all abilities basketball when I was in high school, and that flowed into a position working at Down Syndrome Victoria. So I was kind of lucky that my paid work in uni was able to count for the work experience requirements for the degree. But I had other friends that definitely just emailed around and took whatever it was, whether it was working at, like what Kath said, like food banks or other local council kind of roles. There's always a lot of youth services that are always looking for volunteers in local councils as well. But yeah, I found that I have a real love for sport, so that was a really interesting thing, and a lot of people don't know about a lot of all ability sports, and they're always looking for volunteers, whether it's running up and down the courts or reffing basketball or netball games, taking scores. They're always looking for people to help out. So I definitely, although they're not running, they are starting to get back up again at the moment. So look out for that kind of stuff if you're interested in that.
And Chantal, what about you?
Yeah, I volunteered with Eating Disorders Victoria for about 2 years. So that's really where my drive and motivation was for applying for this course, and kind of the areas that I want to specialise in along the way of my social work journey and profession. So that was a bit of a, I guess, I had kind of got myself in the door there prior to applying for the social work masters. So I guess that I didn't really know that was part of the requirement until I obviously went to go and apply, and I thought, well, yeah, that's a bit cool that I already have that background there. But especially if there's anyone out there who has an interest in that, I know that they are looking for volunteers as well. So that's another area. It's a bit of a niche area, but the work that you can do with people, is pretty special. So yeah.
And Larissa, you had a background in finance, so I'm curious to hear from you what your relevant volunteer or work experience was.
Yeah, that does sound like a funny kind of transition, doesn't it? Yeah, a couple of things. So because I was living in London, because I'd worked at a couple of summer camp, well, the same summer camp, but like 2 years in a row in the US, and because the summer camp it definitely had it had strong ties to social work. So I believe that was like a paid work that I'd done over those 2 summers, and involved a lot of like working with the teens that were there at camp, and so yeah, so I believe that was like the paid experience, I suppose. And I'd also done a lot of volunteer work in London. There I was volunteering with a migrant drop-in centre. And it was actually a really amazing organization, and they had every Sunday they were set up in so it was in East London, which is like a very culturally diverse area of London, and and it was basically a space for people to drop in, have a hot meal, have, their children were taken care of while they, they could share a meal with other people in the community. They could access like computers if they needed to. They also had access to legal aid for particularly for visa related things. So things like that. And that was I volunteered with them for about a year before I moved over here. So yeah, a bit of a mix of experience, not just the finance, I suppose.
Kath, we had a question come through that's really quite fascinating. So this student was initially interested in studying counselling, but she's also thinking that social work might prove to be a good option as it seems to qualify you for the same kind of jobs. Are you able to offer any insight into the difference between counselling? Sorry, are you able to offer any insights into the differences there are, but also about the counselling skills provided through the course?
Yeah, good question. I think that's a really good question. I think it's a difficult decision to make. When you're doing a counselling master's, you are going to go much more into depth in terms of your counselling skills. You'll probably do a whole lot of range of different therapeutic styles. Because social work is about the individual in the environment, we do some counselling skills, but we also work with thinking about families, communities, policy, and so we cover off a much broader range of different contexts and skills, and same with the placements. So a lot of our graduates, looking at you, Chantel, sort of talk about the course being a bit of a jack of all trades. You learn a lot of different things widely, but you specialise when you're on placement. And so for students who really want to get counselling focus, it's really about trying to choose a counselling placement, particularly in your final year, and that's where you get that real hands-on skills to specialise. So we teach you a lot of different things, but you can drill down with your placements. I think the strength for social work over a counselling course would be our accreditation. The AASW is recognised under a few different policy schemes where ACAP and some of the other counselling accreditations aren't. So you'll be able to get a Medicare number. And I think it's a little bit easier to get NDIS registration and a few things like that. So it kind of comes with this sort of, the AASW is quite highly regarded in policy circles. So if your aim is to open up a private practice, doing a social work qualification will get you further, because you'll be able to access it, have a Medicare number, rather than seeking out clients who are paying their full fees, basically. So we do have a lot of students who do a counselling degree and then come to us to do their social work. So again, up to you, they're both great courses, but I would suggest that social work will get you a little bit further into that counselling profession.
We're almost out of time and we have so many questions. I might take one last question and I'll address it to the group. So this particular student is looking or is asking what the timetable might look like. So they have carers responsibilities, as I imagine many people in the course do, and they're wondering how or if it's possible to fit part-time work in alongside of the course.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, I probably shouldn't be advocating for this, but my first year I worked for like part-time and studied part-time. So I literally worked like the whole way through. But can I just say, like, not everyone has the capacity to do that. And I'm not saying that you should, but I'm saying that there is room within this degree to be able to do that. And it's actually really amazing the support that you get from tutors and lecturers and your cohort. Like once you start to get to know that everyone else is in the same boat as you, a lot of mature age students who have decided to take on a different, direction and, family life, caring responsibilities. But the cohort and the teaching faculty are outstanding in just being really understanding. So I believe you can do it, but I don't necessarily want to advocate that you should overload yourself, but know that there is support available. And I can't stress enough how approachable everyone is, and especially the teaching staff. And Kath, is one of those people. So yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Just in terms of timetabling, for the first and second years, we try and group all the classes into 2 days. So in your first year, you do it all on Monday and Tuesdays. In years, it's generally Thursday and Fridays. And there's capacity to do it part-time. So it is possible, can't tell. It does, each individual has different sort of thresholds in terms of how much they can work and how much social life they need. And but it is possible. Again, the part-time opportunity, again, actually spreading that out over 3 or 4 years is definitely an opportunity as well.
We're just about out of time, everyone. I'd like to thank Kath and our student panelists for sharing their experiences with us today. I'd also like to reassure you that if we haven't got to your question, because I can see there are so many questions in the chat, we do have your email address and we'll follow up with you via email. You'll also receive after the webinar a link to the recording, as well as an invitation to book in for a 48-hour offer or a consult with a member of the student recruitment team or a member of the social work academic team. So you can continue to have a conversation with us prior to applying. Yes, that's all. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.